Good evening, everyone, and welcome to LFC Transfer Room. I am joined by absolute gurus of knowledge of the game in Stu. Hello, Stu.
G'day.
Willem, hello. Say hello.
Hello, mate.
And Reese. So
Yes.
thank
What's
you
up,
for
thank you.
joining. If everyone hasn't already, although you probably have, I'd like to just make a request that you join our YouTube following, as well as kind of follow us on Twitter, now X. So make sure to put their notifications available so you can see our beautiful faces when we go live. We've got a multitude of topics we're going to be talking about today. But before I do, let me hide that image. Before I do, Stu, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good.
What have you been up
What
to?
not a lot. Not a lot. Keeping an eye on the news. Just hoping for that contract drama to sort itself out. Nope. That's not sorting itself out, is it?
No, not quite yet, although the time is ticking. Willem, how are you?
Yeah, good, man. I've just been doing my own things outside of the games. Really, I've decided to kind of tune out a bit of the news around it because I'm getting a bit tired of it. So I'd rather just focus on the pitch stuff right now.
Yeah. And then it kind of like keeps going back to them contract extensions. We'll try our best not to look at the contract extensions over the course of the next hour. And Reese, hello.
Yeah, I'm good, man. You know, it's the same old grind. Obviously, it's quite cold. I'm not gonna lie, it's been quite cold this week in London. But yeah, I'm good. I'm not really paying too much mind to contracts and stuff. I'm just trying to focus on what Liverpool's doing on the pitch because I think we get too caught up in that sometimes. So I think we should just try and focus on the great stuff we're doing, being top and winning most of our games and whatnot.
Fantastic. Okay. So let's kick off straight away then. So Fabrizio Romano, who some would claim to be a tapping merchant, I would not obviously prescribe to that. However, he has highlighted that Liverpool have been scouting thoroughly Cherki from Lyon, who, you know, can be seen as an attack of mid, some kind of mistaken for a winger. What does happen is he has an absolute wand of a foot. Stu, we seem to talk about him every time we're on. We're linked again, although Fabrizio has said nothing concrete, but there is interest there. A good fit?
Well, yeah, he's a good fit for any top team. There's no doubt the lad's got the talent about him, but again, it's those words: scouted thoroughly, we're interested. I don't honestly see at the moment where he would fit in the team right at this point in time. A summer move, maybe, depending on what happens with other players, but at the moment, I just don't see it. There's more important areas that I think we should be concentrating on. Is it the right price, though, for us to pull the trigger? Yes, it's definitely around the right price mark. That's for certain. But I just don't see where he fits in.
It does have an Edwards signing written all over it, doesn't it? I saw quotes that they'd accept something along the lines of 24 million euros.
Exactly.
Which, given the climate, given the fact that everyone was craving him, weren't they, for the last couple of years, and still only 21, does feel like it's got that Edwards feel. Willem, where would you put him?
I mean, I think kind of like what Stu said as well. He's a very talented player, especially technically. He's very gifted, but I also would have my doubts more on the side of the physicality as well. I think he's a very similar profile to Elliott, but I would even argue that Elliott probably even has a bit of a better physicality than he has overall. And I think similar to Stu, I get sometimes that when we see an opportunity arise that we maybe move it forward a window instead of maybe focusing it on the summer. But it would kind of feel like 2 years ago in the winter when we signed Gakpo, when everyone was going, we kind of need a midfielder here because Fabinho and Henderson's legs are completely gone and we can't rely on it. And instead we only brought in Gakpo. So it would feel similar to that. I'm not against us signing him, but I have the same. I wouldn't really see the point of doing it right now.
It's one of them, isn't it? So it's like if he was to come in and he plays in his natural position, and then you've got him sitting, you know, in an ideal world, you've got like McAllister, you've got Gravenberch, and he sits in front. Does he have that kind of same energy as like Szoboszlai? The answer's no, is it? So he's not that. He's not that type of player. Reece, have you seen much of Cherki?
Not too much, but I think from what I have seen, he seems like a talented player. But I think if we was going to move for him, we would have moved already. Obviously, if you look at the price, it kind of looks like that could be kind of our ballpark because it's quite cheap. But I've also heard, I'm sure I heard that Bayern were interested in him as well. I just think right now, unless someone goes, I don't see us bringing someone in. That's kind of how I feel. I think you hear a lot of us being linked with this one and that one. I think if we was gonna get who we need to get, I think we would have signed someone already. So I don't see us making no movements until the summer.
There's been allegations that he's almost kind of like a bit of a YouTube Clippets player. And for what rings in my ears around that would be like your Ricardo Quaresmas, where, do you remember when, probably showing me age now, but like about 15 years ago, every kind of like clip of them was the outside of the foot, 35-yard through ball. It just looked absolutely amazing. And then when he did get his moves, they didn't quite work out. Cherki's Stephen, kind of regularly kind of like hosts, shown quite some impressive stats on him. But it does feel like in that model, Willem, of kind of like in the kind of like Harvey Elliott type role, and we'll come to him a little bit later. Stu, do you think it is just literally opportunistic? Probably bumped it up the kind of like priority list a little bit rather than some crying out. So I can see there's some comments on here about kind of, where's it gone? There was kind of like comments about the Bournemouth left back Kerkez. Let's see if we can get it up. Thank you, Tanya, about Kerkez. So you can see there's some kind of like out there kind of obvious kind of signings that we need to make. It wouldn't feel like that 10 role is the most obvious one. Do you think it is just literally opportunistic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the price point is what makes the whole thing seem a little bit more palatable. Well, obviously, when you're talking, I'm just actually looking at the data site, comparing him to Diaz's, Gakpo's, and Salah's output this season, and he's actually ahead of Gakpo and Diaz, and he's only a couple of points off Salah's output. But obviously, bearing in mind this is the French league, there is a bit of a difference in that as well. So from that standpoint, he's on good form then as well. So it shows that he has got a bit of talent. The price point matches. But again, I'll emphasize, where do we play him? If we got a fully fit squad, and touch wood, we will until the end of the season, he really isn't going to get much game time.
No.
And like Willem said, I want to see more of Elliott coming into the squad. That's who I want to see more of. So again, like Tanya's comment, left back for me is more important. Another DM is more important for me.
Yeah.
But I hope, really, I'm not that fussed if we do or don't, but the side of me saying, no, I'm not bothered. I really don't want it.
No. Willem, would you be happy for him to come in?
And if we do end up getting him, then of course I'll be happy to get him in. But I think I'm kind of I think me and Stu are in a bit of a similar camp where it's just like there's other areas where I would look at much rather now as well, especially for this current season as well, because it does feel, especially with left back, the left back is a little bit of the weak link. I also personally keep having the fear a little bit of there's still 5 months to go for Alexis McAllister and Gravenberch to pretty much play every game coming up as well, which is something that is worrying me a bit. And to be honest, for the 10, I think as well with the 10, we've got Szoboszlai, we've got Elliott, and then we potentially have one of Jones and McAllister who can pretty much put in that role as well, especially like McAllister. Quite often I quite like it when he gets put in the 10 because I think because his passing is so good as well from going into there, he can really find those balls too. Again, if we get him in, not opposed to it whatsoever. But I would rather be looking at other areas.
It feels like there's, out of all the positions in our squad it's hard seeing there's some gaping holes, because you look at the Champions League, we're flying. You look at the league, we're flying, but we can still see it as fans that see week in, week out, can't we? You can see there's more pressing need. and the amount of players at the club that can play as a 10. Reece, if that is the position he's kind of like going for, good signing?
I think it's a good signing. I don't think it's what we need right this minute, but it could benefit us because I know obviously we got Szoboszlai there, and I do like Szoboszlai, but Slot has said that he wants him to kind of produce more numbers. I know Williams said Jones could play in the 10, but he doesn't look to me like a 10 when he has played there. And then potentially, I would say when we address the midfield, I could see McAllister going in the 10 long term because he has, if you've watched some of our games lately, McAllister's kind of been playing slightly more further forward, not as deep. But any kind of signing I would be excited about because it just gives you that kind of buzz, and then it also kind of lets you know Liverpool's kind of got some serious intentions. But in terms of the other areas we need to address, like William has said, left back and if ideally left back, centre back, or DM is what I would be more interested in getting. I think we can cope because we have been coping in terms of going forward. But yeah.
Do you remember when Benitez? Thank you for that. Do you remember when Benitez was at the club and he said, hasn't he, a number of times, well during his tenure, but also afterwards, that when he's at any club, he likes to bring in 2 or 3 players every summer, just to kind of give everyone a bit of a lift. And obviously we missed out summer just gone, which makes sense too. You know, Arne Slot has only just kind of like come in. It wouldn't make sense that he kind of comes in. I saw this comment, I think it was Tanya that highlighted about bringing in Jimenez from Feyenoord. And we see it a lot, and we see the new managers kind of like just fly in and bring their own players across without fully assessing the squad. So it makes a lot of sense not to invest in that time. Even though as a fan, you're craving that new signing. Although, like you've just highlighted before, left back and a 6 do feel a bit more of a priority. We'll move on to the next topic, but before I do, can I just make sure that everyone kind of is aware that we add your notifications again, as you can kind of like see Stu, Willem and Reese's expert knowledge in the game. So feel free to subscribe, hit the notifications so you know that when we're going live, you can join us in the future. But the next kind of like topic I want to go to that potentially goes into that number kind of like 6 question again is our old friend Stefan, old as in not, Stefan Bajcetic, who currently on loan at Salzburg, can't get a game at the moment. Well, he can. He's playing a little bit, not as much as probably he kind of really wanted to. There was rumours, wasn't it, earlier in the window that we were going to bring him back. That hasn't happened. In fact, it's the opposite, because the Athletic today is reporting that we're very happy with how his loan is going. They're very happy specifically with the passing data that they're getting back. Will, and you highlighted a little bit earlier, you know, when we get that 6 sorted, you know, Stu, I'll come to yourself in a minute, but Will, that 6, is it Bajcetic?
It could be Bajcetic, but I think there's a lot of question marks around Bajcetic right now. I think we all know what kind of player he can be, especially from that period on the clock when he started breaking through into the squad. I don't think there's one single person probably in our whole group who was like not excited about Bajcetic coming through. I think it has kind of dropped off. I think what for me personally has been a bit of a red flag going in is that he's been apparently late for training a lot, and his attitude doesn't always seem to be the best going in. And it does kind of feel like, let's see, we're about 15 minutes in, so I can say it probably now. It does kind of feel like we have a bit of a no dickhead policy at the club. So like, as it is true that they often talk about it, that along with the data and the background check, they also do a lot of the background check as well into their background, their families, where they're from, how they've grown up, and I think that will play a factor because at the end of the day, it will be about his attitude. If he's only going to come back after this loan spell and he's more like, every player is selfish in a certain way that they're going to look for minutes, but if it's more to the point where he is so frustrated with the fact that he won't be getting any minutes or isn't getting the minutes that he likes, that he can cause a bit of a bit of tension internally, then I don't know if we have if there's a future for Bajcetic with us. But I personally would rather still give him the chance to come through. But I would still think that he would be taking over the Endo or Morton role kind of right now, which is also not getting the most amount of minutes. but kind of picking up that part of the rotation.
Do you remember when Bajcetic first kind of like broke in? I can't remember. You'll be able to correct me, but was the game? Was it?
It was
it
pre-season
Villa?
2022-2023 when I first properly saw him for a couple of games, and that's when I was in awe. I was looking at him. I was like, "Who's this kid we've got? He's mental. He's covering everything in midfield."
Head on shoulders swivel, didn't he?
Mm.
As soon as he kind of like first came into the club, and I think it was Middlesbrough, although I'm pretty sure someone will be able to correct me. When ball drops out, pretty much no one really knows who he is, and rather than what most young players would probably do is try and put the laces through the ball and try and hit it, at least try and test the keeper, that he rounds the keeper.
It's Villa.
Villa and puts it in with his left foot. I couldn't make Villa, but Middlesbrough, but kind of like puts it away, doesn't he, with absolute class. And then straight away we all looked at it and thought, "Oh, hello." And then it was 10 minutes later in the same game. I can't remember who the ball was dropping at. Clean through. And he's got this kind of like baby face, hasn't he? And I remember the camera kind of like panning around. He's like smiling as he's running away. And you kind of think he's going to be a bit of a player. Stu, a future 6 for us, a future starter to push McAllister up?
Again, the lad was unlucky with injuries. I mean, he got a really, really serious one, which kept it out for about 10 months, I think it was. So obviously, and that was just after he broke into the side. So he was unlucky there, but there were rumours going around that he was not exactly the most professional around, and that could have been one of the reasons. That's what I do worry about him. He's clearly got the talent to play there. Another thing I read, I don't know how true it is, Slot apparently didn't see him like sort of fit into the squad for that number 6 role, and that's another reason why he's been loaned out to Salzburg, to get the minutes to see if he can learn that sort of role, because he saw that's how they sort of play. Kind of hasn't worked out. But Salzburg are just looking over his last few games. It's not been the best, to say the least, and he's not had that much game, or not as much game time as I think he should have, if he was good enough. And that's the thing. If we thought he was good enough to play in a Klopp side, but he's struggling for minutes at the Salzburg side, that's when I'm going to start asking questions.
Yeah, there's concerns there, isn't there? I think when it was, like I said before, in that break, that first time that he probably grabbed a lot of fans' attention when he scored that goal against Villa. Thank you, Willem. Villa. You would have thought he would have went on and on. He took a bit of an injury at such a young age as well, didn't he? It took a lot to wrestle back. But like you just said before, Arne Slot coming into the squad, knowing that there's, at the time, we didn't know what Gravenberch was going to turn around and be, prime Rijkaard, did we? But he's turned into such a good player that there was a lack of 6s at the club. Effectively how it felt when he first kind of like came in. Looks at Bajcetic and still, because it was reasonably early on, wasn't it, as well? He agreed for him to go out in his tenure. It wasn't. So obviously he's had reports around that, goes out, and as you say before, struggling for a bit of game time. Reese, is he our number 6 for the future?
No, I think he can be a squad. I think he can be a squad player. I think we need to go out and we need to actually buy one. I think obviously it was a shame with the injury, because when he came in, he was doing quite well. But we got to bear in mind he was a young player, and at times, because we didn't always address certain areas, certain players would be getting used, where at other clubs they wouldn't have had to come in because their squads weren't so thin. Obviously, he hasn't played as much at what is the team?
Salzburg.
Salzburg, and then wasn't it Linders who was at that? Linders was at that team.
Yeah, and he got sacked a month ago.
And he got sacked, so things ain't really. It's kind of been up and down for him, and then you've heard little reports of attitude and stuff, which is strange because you never really saw that at Liverpool. So maybe he's kind of not happy being on loan or something. But I think he's a talented player. I wouldn't get rid of him. I think he can definitely be part of the squad, but I don't think he's necessarily the answer to a 6. I more look at him as maybe an 8, because I think he's good on the ball. I think he's too small to be the 6, not physical enough for me.
Very composed, isn't he, as well? He's got that.
I think it would be wasted if we played him just in the 6 for me.
He's only played one set of full 90 minutes.
Okay, that's worrying. Yeah.
In the league.
And what's weird is, considering he hasn't played, but the club are happy that his passing statistics look good. I don't understand, or whatever they've been looking at. If he hasn't played much, he can't have much to go off. No.
Jay is hello, Jay. Jay is just kind of like highlighted in the chat. The transfer value still only meets 10 million on transfer market.
Yeah.
Whilst being registered at kind of like a top club. So I'll ask the chat. So we've got nearly 3,800 people who are watching this live stream. Hello to everyone. And I'll ask yourselves the question as well. If he's not the 6, who is? I'll go to our brilliant panelists in a minute to kind of ask the same question. Because, you know, in terms of kind of like transfer windows, we've been a little bit starved, haven't we, over the last couple? So it might be nice to kind of like just branch our thoughts out a little bit. Obviously, Zubamendi was kind of like highlighted last summer. You know, Joyce, Ornstein all kind of like messaged about it. Got us excited. And then obviously Zubamendi decided the mountains would be more beneficial in his life and battling at mid-table. Stu, number 6 is out there. It seems to be, we go through a bit of kind of like a phase, don't we, in terms of like abundance of players in certain areas. At the moment, that seems to be the wing positions. You can just name 10 amazing wingers right now. 6, not so much. Who gets your interest? Who would you bring in as a 6? If you could. Magic one time.
Well, I think the 2 that interest me at the moment is either Angelo Stiller at Stuttgart,
yeah,
or Carlos Baleba.
Yeah. That's my 2 as well.
Yeah, man, it's at the moment. I mean, I've been watching Baleba quite closely, and like sort of obviously when we played Brighton, all the Brighton matches that have been on telly and that. And from what I've seen, he's got a lot of potential, and he's very, very similar in the way he play to Gravenberch.
Yeah,
he just likes a little bit more of a shot than Gravenberch does. He's a little bit more ambitious in the attacking sense compared to Grav, but very, very similar style of players. Angelo Stiller, again, not as big or tall physically, I think, as Gravenberch, but got very, very good passing range, very, very good in duels and tackles, and all the data supports that for the season. He's having an absolute blinding season at Stuttgart. Baleba's having a really good season with Brighton. For me, it's one of those 2 at the moment. I know, obviously, Zubamendi's going to be touted again and all that sort of stuff, but for me, either of those 2 I'll be very happy with.
The scouting departments at Brighton are just absolutely ridiculous, aren't they? So whether it be Caicedo, you know, McAllister, they kind of like bring in, they can just spot talent, can't they?
The two teams I really admire in the Premier League at the moment is Brighton and Brentford.
Which have 2 completely different kinds of like approaches, don't they? Really, because
Brighton,
Brentford. Do you remember they caused a bit of an uproar years ago because they got rid of their academy?
Yeah, but now they're signing an absolute worldie of a right back in Michael Coyote from Fiorentina.
Yeah,
he's a belting right back, and let's keep an eye out for him. He's going to be awesome.
It'd be good when we buy him for 65 million. A couple of years later. Brilliant, thank you, Willem. Magic one time, number 6 that you could bring in.
It's very similar to Stu, really. I mean, my absolute number 1 target, and he has been for a while now, is Baleba, because I think Baleba is like, I think very similar to what Stu said. He does have that bit of the attacking notion in him, but I think he's more physical than any of our midfield players in there as well. And I think sometimes, and I love grabbing McAllister, but sometimes especially in the transition moments, it does feel like sometimes we can get passed through a little bit easier, or people can dribble through sometimes a bit easier. I think if we add Baleba to that would almost solve that problem in itself, because I think I rate him that highly, really. That's kind of what it comes down to more. Then I would still, even though after the whole last summer and after everything that happened, look, if Zubamendi does want to come, I would still get him, because I do think he is. I do rate Zubamendi a lot. I do think he is a quality player. And then along Stiller was also going to be a name that I mentioned, and Edison is definitely also from Atalanta one that I would still be keeping an eye on, because as well, we can't be doing the same as we do every year, which is just focus on the one absolute target, and that is it. I think we can be a bit more flexible. Like, I think if we're going on a data model with a laptop, there has to be a list of 3 or 4 candidates. I doubt there's just one candidate that comes out every time, especially with the amount of football players that there are around in the world. So it would be one of them 4, and I feel like I'm forgetting one that is on the tip of my tongue who I would also still have there. But I'm completely blanking on it right now. So if I come back on it, then I'll maybe randomly shout it in between. But I would be looking at any of those 4 names.
So with in an ideal world, in a football manager world, are we talking Gravenberch sitting next to Balbert, and then in front Raven McAllister, who can just dictate the tempo? And that looks like a bit of a pretty mean midfield. Lisa, you were kind of like in agreement with Stu in terms of your number 6.
My 2 would be Belieber and Angelo Stiller. I think Angelo Stiller's underrated. For those who know about him, they'll know he's a talented player. But I think because he's maybe not, some players have the name and then they think, oh yeah, superstar. I think he's very durable. I think all round quite a good player. A slot kind of player as well. So I wouldn't mind him. I don't think we'd have to pay too much. I don't think either for him. I don't think we'd have to pay over the odds for him. Obviously, we've spoke about Brighton in terms of their scouting system and how they just find ways to get gems. And I think Carlos Belieber, like I said, serious player. I think obviously he looks like he's good on the ball, very press resistant, but he looks physically like he enjoys that battle. He looks very like he likes to bully, he likes to dominate.
Yeah.
Whereas don't get me wrong, Gravenberch can be physical at times, but I think if you look at our midfield, sometimes when we play certain teams, like when we played Newcastle, Forest, certain teams that are very physical, we don't always look up for the battle. We look like we can 100% play football and we're superior to most teams, but there's times where we don't look like we're up for that. And I think we need a bit more of a nastiness, a bit more of bullying inside the midfield, because there's going to be games where you're not going to win based on playing football. You're going to have to win by bullying, by controlling the midfield. So those would be my 2. And I would still take Zubimendi as well, even though I know the way he rejected us and whatnot. I think he's talented. If he's serious about coming to us, then I would. But I don't think we're going to go in for him again because of how it went, and it kind of made us look like mugs. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing insight. I think with that's probably worth opening it out, isn't it, really? So Zubimendi is obviously kind of looking for a transfer this summer. And there's been rumours already, strong rumours, that he's kind of like linked with a move to Arsenal, although they've got bigger issues in their squad rather than looking at that particular role. Would you go back in for him, Stu? Would you go back in for Zubimendi? Is he the profile of the player that we need? So when we're talking about Bajcetic, and you think he might be at times a little bit weak, although we can throw a tackling, a little bit weak in that area, but then we look at, the array of talent coming from Brighton, and we think that would be a nice fit. Zubimendi is just something different, isn't he? I can't think of many alternatives other than Rodri for his type.
I think I'm doing a little bit of data comparison and looking at him, Grav, Stiller, and Belieber. Obviously, Belieber's the youngest, I think, youngest option out of those 4. He's still got a bit of a learning curve, still got a lot of game time to learn, and hence he's got the lowest data out of the lot. The player that still comes out on top, actually, out of all of them, is Stiller. Zubimendi and Grav are incredibly similar. There is like a point between them, but Angelo Stiller is streets ahead of Zubimendi.
He's a stat monster, isn't he?
So, the Spanish league and the German league, I'd say they're probably comparable on like sort of quality level. So I think it's a fair shout. Would I go back in for Zubimendi after he said he wanted to just stay for the mountains? I mean,
I know I've shared it, but it's worth shaving again, Jay. He prefers the mountains in London, the obviously mountain terrain of London.
I don't know. I mean, obviously players can change their mind and things like that. That's their prerogative at the end of the day. They're only human. So I wouldn't say no. He'd be another great number 6 for us. But personally, I'm sticking with my two choices, either Stiller or Belabor. They're the ones that get me a little bit more excited. Just put it that way.
I think with Zubimendi, it's like, is it too dissimilar to what's happening with Trent? We can't really kind of like, we feel a bit arsey in a way, don't we, in terms of kind of like Trent. He's kind of like grew up, he's been like, captain at youth levels, he's worked his way up into being a first team world-class player. Zubimendi's been on a similar journey, hasn't he? To where he is. And then we expect, and maybe it's our ego a little bit, what do you mean he's saying no? And then on the flip side, that we're angry with Trent at even considering a move to Real. William, would you take Zubi?
Yeah, no, I would definitely. I think one thing as well with Zubimendi that no one really considers, seeing as this has happened now both in the last summer and in now in the winter with Arsenal. I think his agent is trying to play some mad tricks to try and get a new contract sorted out for himself as well. Because genuinely, if you look at it as well, we got linked last summer, and within a week's time, it all shifted and it came out. And when the Ornstein stuff came out about Zubimendi to Arsenal, the same journalist who at first in the summer reported for us that there was interest and that it could be on, and then was also the first to report that he was definitely not coming, was already coming out with a report after it. He's called Mikel Rec 14 or something like that on Twitter. It's Mikel something, but I forgot his last name. And he's already come out and said now that apparently in the private part of Zubimendi's getting very frustrated with the British media and all the media pretty much putting attention on him getting a move every time, and that if there's anything to happen, it will be in the summer, meaning he wants those 6 months to think about it. And to be honest, I can't actually see a move. I think the moment for him to move was last summer, and he's been linked to loads of clubs throughout the years already throughout it, and he hasn't done it. So I would in general also be very surprised if all of a sudden he went to move again. Would I take him? Yes, 100%. But I just don't think he'll actually move.
No, I agree. And also kind of like the fact that I was surprised, though, to read that he was linked so heavily with Arsenal. And, I know that there's been a couple of chats, can't find them at the moment, there's a couple of chats on the side there, just kind of like saying they've got bigger issues with regards to kind of like the striker
but it's
situation.
The link as well, if you think about it. Last summer, what they focused on a lot was, he wants to follow Xabi Alonso, he was his idol back in the day, that's it. And now they're saying, Mikel Arteta is playing a big fact. Mikel Arteta is also Basque, and it seems they're throwing around a lot of the Basque links as well in the media as to why the reason for it is. But I mean, if that were the case, then any Basque player playing at a foreign club would be raiding the whole Basque country in Spain to get everyone to come down there from Bilbao or Sociedad. So I think there's been way more probably made out of it than there's actually likely going on.
Absolutely. Do you remember, like, straight after we were intensively linked for that, like, 48 hours that I was just constantly checking Twitter to see if the deal was done for Zubimendi, that suddenly Sociedad were rumoured to have kind of like said, they've got this big bumper contract they're going to give him.
And he hasn't got it.
It hasn't even appeared, has it? It's just disappeared since that was the case. Reece, I know you highlighted before about you'd take him. Still agree after listening to Stu and Willem? Still take him?
No, I would still take him. I know, obviously, it's not always necessary. It's going to make people question because you don't want to have a player who kind of flip-flops with changing his mind and stuff. I just think he fits our system, and I think he's a very good player. Obviously, I don't see us going back in for him just because of what happened. I think and then now you're seeing them being linked with other clubs. Like William said, it looks like the agent playing more. It looks like they're playing more games because Arsenal went in for him before us, and he didn't, and he said no to Arsenal. All of a sudden, Arsenal's the team now. It's just so I don't know. If he's serious, then yes, but I don't think we're going to take that chance again because of the groundwork we kind of put in, and then the last minute changing your mind. And also, it does grate me a bit that he kind of thought all of a sudden he's been at this team how long they're going to give him the contract that you want. whereas they hadn't given it to you before. What made you
Yeah.
think they're going to do that now? Most of the time when someone's desperate, you call their bluff, that it's kind of false, because they would have kind of done it already. If they rate you and you're the local boy from there, they should have kind of given it already. So it's kind of weird how you kind of fell for that all of a sudden now that they've got the money, they're just going to be able to match Liverpool, whereas they was never going to do that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because some of the fan base are like, no, you've knocked us back once, we're not going to go back in for you. And at the same time, we've done that with Gravenberch, didn't we? And we were after him when he was at Ajax, but you didn't. Anyone would just take him now, wouldn't it? There'd been none of them kind of like voices of concern about going back in. Thank you for the insight. We've got nearly 5,000 people watching the expert insight today of Stu, Willem, and Reese. So get your notifications on. Start following us on Twitter or X or whatever it's called. We'd love to keep you company. We're ready to go for another topic today, and it's one that splits the fan base quite a lot. So I'm kind of going to brace myself into my chair, really. And the chat can play along as well, because Paul Gorst for the Echo has kind of highlighted, although there was interest, Liverpool have no interest whatsoever in selling Darwin Nunez. He's seen as an integral part of the first team squad. Chat, you can get involved as well. If you could describe Nunez in one word, what would that one word be? And try to keep the expletives to a minimum. Or expletive away, I don't mind. For our panel, Stu, one word. How would you describe Darwin Nunez?
Chaotic.
Chaotic?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
That's just basically his Liverpool career. Chaotic. Up and down, roller coaster is another way I could describe it.
Yeah.
But let's be clear here. We've spent a lot of money on a striker. Strikers are paid to score goals.
Yeah.
And he hasn't done that.
No.
His goal scoring stats are terrible. And it's not worth the money that we paid for it. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that we're not going to sell him, but I agree not selling him in January, because he still is a good player and he can make a difference, as proven at the Brentford game. That was a prime example. That is what he can do. But come the end of the season, I am extremely certain that he will be sold. And I believe that we will be looking at a new striker as well. I cannot see him staying past the summer. I'll be stunned if that happens.
Have you ever seen a player split the fan base quite like Nunez? Probably one that I go to when I think about splitting it so much was like, do you remember Lucas Leiva?
Yeah.
When you'd have half, thank God Twitter wasn't what it was then, but at the same time, Lucas was another one, wasn't it? 100% work ethic, limitations when he had the ball at his feet. Willem, how would you describe Nunez?
Enigma.
Well, that's a good one, isn't it? That's a good one. That's got me inspired as well. So
I got lucky. You got Stu talking first for 2-3 minutes. It gave me all the time in the world to think of the one word. That was it. No, look, I think the one thing I always say with Nunez is I love his work rate. I love that he really puts in the work and stuff and everything. Is it good enough for 85 million? Because the add-ons have pretty much been reached, so it is 85 million most likely that we've ended up spending in there. Is it good enough for 85 million? And can we keep an 85 million player as a bench option? That is, and with the way we operate and the way we run, that is my biggest issue with it. And unfortunately, in my point of view, you can't. Now, seeing as it's Paul Gorst, I'm not too worried about the link, to be fair, because I don't think I've seen Paul Gorst get anything right in years. So I'm not, and knowing now the luck that I've said that, most likely this will be the only thing that he will get right now for the past 4 years or something like that. I think similar to Stu, when the rumours came in of the £70 million bit of Saudi Arabia, I'm not gonna lie, I went take it. I said take it because you don't know by the summer if you're ever going to get an offer like that coming in. Now looking back on it, we even have to see if that offer was even true, if it was even coming through, what the interest was. So it's all just the same from it. I think for him to stay beyond this summer, he would need to have such an unbelievable 5 months. So he would pretty much need the Brentford cameo for the next 20 games coming in. And I think that's more the issue with him. He had his Newcastle moment last year where he had 2 amazing finishes, comes on and then does it. And he had the last-minute winner against Forest. And he can get you those moments. I mean, the first goal he scored this season, that left footer on the edge of the box against Bournemouth, it's a brilliant goal. I'm more worried about him, actually, when he's about 6 yards away from the goal than if he's from the edge of the box and he's trying to have a shot. Because more often than not, he actually does pretty well with those shots. And I think that's just a thing for it. And I think the bigger debate comes down to it where everyone's also getting a bit fed up with Jota's injury record. And Jota's contract is also running out, after the summer. I think it's about 2 years after this summer that comes up now.
Yeah.
So we're also going to have to make a decision on Jota at some point as well. But I still think unless he can have that massive turnaround, and to be honest, based on the past 2.5 seasons, I can't see it happen. I can't. He was brilliant for that cameo against Brentford. I'm one of his biggest critics, but I was also extremely happy for him when he came on and it was the same. It was 2 back-to-back really composed finishes like he had against Newcastle last year. And it's those moments where you look at him where you're like, why can you not produce this at least a bit more frequently than a few moments in the season? And I think that just ends up being the biggest, the biggest frustration with him and what caused the division. And I think as well, it just doesn't help with a lot of the online fans. It's the same with Mo Salah. There's some fans online who are so in love with a player, they sometimes will defend that player to a fault at times. Even Mo Salah didn't have the greatest run of past 3-4 games now for us and so on. If you criticize him a little bit, that's fine. You can say he's not had a good amount of games, but there will be some people then on Twitter who will interpret that as completely something else, going, "How dare you?" and "How do you?" And that goes for a lot of players, and that same goes for Nunez. And I think that also causes that tension in between, because then you also have that other side who also think about who since day one have been like, "I don't like his touch. I don't like the way he's finishing. I don't like that." So I think it just intensifies every time he either has a really good game or a really bad game. And I think it's just it's just more something within the fan base that we can't do without it. I think realistically, we just can't keep an 85 million player on the bench as an option to come on every 15 minutes.
Which is interesting when you kind of see them Cherki links, isn't it? Because this obviously left back cries out, doesn't it? But the centre forward role, like you said before, if Jota could stay fit, it's probably his position for the taking, isn't it? And then we flirted with the idea of playing Luis Diaz there, had a run of games there, started off well, didn't he? Banged the hat-trick in. But then suddenly kind of faded out a little bit in terms of that kind of role. Nunez gets, plays, scores, bangs a couple in against Brentford. The start of the Lille game, he looked quite sharp, I thought. He dropped back. There was a run he made in the first couple of minutes. He was just absolutely...
It was a typical Nunez game.
It was a typical Nunez game. I think last day sums it up. It's good evening. Nunez is one of the strangest players I've ever seen. He won't score for months, but his next goal will be in the Champions League final. And I think that pretty much...
To win us it. You can see it now, can't you?
Yeah.
It could actually happen.
Doesn't do anything for 10 games and then scores an overhead from 25 yards against Real Madrid. All over the Liverpool echo, isn't it? Kind of arms up in the air, how he's got a better highlight reel than Pele. But yet at the same time, in that Lille game, I think it was around 25, half an hour in, there was a ball that was played through to him. I can't remember who played it through. I think it was Gravenberg. And that touch led to the counter-attack of Lille, which isn't good enough, is it, for a player of Liverpool? You can forgive missed chances, you can forgive the header he put wide against Brentford, but that touch, it got about 10 yards away from him. Oh, that's Sunday League stuff, isn't it, really, when you kind of see that? I don't mean to go too heavy on him, there's a lot of pressure, but he's been here a while now. Reece, how would you, in one word, describe Nunez?
I'd say he's passionate. I would say.
Okay, tell me more.
I think his heart's in the right place. So if you look at him, he's driven very much by emotion a lot of the time. He'll work hard, like I say, give a lot of effort and stuff, but obviously the quality It's just not what we're looking for. I think with him, obviously it's split because people see that he works hard and that he's trying. It's not that he's not trying. He is trying. If he wasn't trying, then I think the whole fan base would probably agree that, yeah, we don't want him. But people can see he's trying. That's why people kind of hope. You kind of hope that it comes together. I just think he's been here how long now? And like I said, if it was going to come together, it would have really come together this season. But he still can't speak English from what it's. I think he did an interview the other day, right? And it was in.
Yeah, he did in Spanish.
He had a translator. So as well, that for me as well, you should have kind of learned. He doesn't have to necessarily speak it so fluently, but you kind of should have understood. You should be able to do some interviews where you understand the basics now. But I just don't really think you can see that he don't really fit Slot's system. I think from what it looks like, he's better off the bench, because when he come off the bench and when he has certain chances where he doesn't have time to think about it, he scores. When he has time to think about a chance, that's when he frustrates the life of like me anyway. And then I would say, you see that when we just saw the last game, it's like that kind of shows you Nunes. It's like when you see a lot of him, it's frustrating because you see a lot of why did he do that? Whereas when you saw I prefer to kind of see him in moments like coming off the bench and he's able to get a goal and stuff like that. I just think long term going forward, he's not the guy for us. Don't have nothing against him. I think it'll work out for him if he went to Spain or Italy, somewhere else where the teams maybe built a bit more around him. But you could see that he's not really the guy for Slot because he hardly uses him. He even uses Diaz ahead of him. And lately Diaz, like I said up front, it's kind of not been great, but he still will pick him ahead of him. So yeah.
I think lastly, once again, kind of like bringing the kind of font of knowledge for today's chat, to kind of like saying he's the opposite of Rashford. Rashford, who has a high ceiling but just can't be arsed. Darwin Nunez, who tries really hard but is limited. That game he played, which I think Klopp pretty much signed him on, was the Benfica at Anfield game, wasn't it? And he just looked unbelievable. I've never seen anyone manhandle Van Dijk quite like how Nunes played that day. And there was a moment of the game where he sprinted past Trent, which, given the last couple of months, probably isn't really that difficult. But sprinted past Trent, barged him away, barged Van Dijk out the way. And then as Alisson come out and kind of like spread himself to try and get the ball, it like curled it in from like the most obscure angle. So you had this kind of like beast, unbelievable speed. I think in his first couple of weeks at Anfield as well, he was topping up probably it was him and Mudryk, wasn't it? As the quickest players in the league at the time. So you've got a 6-footer, fast, can finish, unbelievably passionate, good work ethic, and then he booked someone at Fulham and then gets sent off. And again, it pretty much just sums up his time at Anfield, really. I agree with you. He's passionate, energetic. What Anfield doesn't put up with is people who don't put a shift in. We just don't have it, though. You can't be a Liverpool player and you don't put a shift in, which is why, our chat that we kind of like have behind the scenes when Trent's put in that awful performance against United and it just reeked of couldn't be arsed, was pretty much one thing that kind of like really aggravated our chat. It would have aggravated the fan base massively. He doesn't do that. He tries, he puts effort in, but I'd try. And I don't think Slot had put me up as a number 9. I'd probably get out of breath going onto the pitch, let alone kind of like playing. But at the same time, we'll go back to the magic wands. So we require a very specific 9 given Slot's style. Stu, who would you bring in? Who would you bring in? Magic wand time. Who would you bring in as a 9?
Oh God, that's going to be a tough one. Jimenez, I think, is an obvious one because he's worked under Slot before. And now he's getting another season under his belt in Europe. And he had a really good
brilliant game yesterday.
Yeah.
Against Bayern. It kind of made me stand up a little bit and have a little dig into his data for this season and last season. And you know what? Actually, he's progressing very, very well. He's still, I think he's only 23.
Yeah.
23, 24, something like that. So he's still
older.
got a little bit of wiggle room of learning before he hits his prime. And I think he's a fair shout. He would be the cheaper option for sure. But obviously, everybody's going to get excited and a little bit twitchy in the pants about Isak to try and get him in. But I mean, come on. Realistically, can you see FSG stumping up over 100 million for a player? We were led on by the whole Caicedo thing with Lavia, and that was all the front. I can never see FSG stumping up that amount of money for one player. So anybody who thinks Isak is coming to Liverpool, get that thought out of your head. It's not happening.
Controversially, it's my own view, I don't think Isak would be a good fit for what we try and do. In terms of his kind of like, I don't really. I put in the chat when everyone was kind of like talking about. I don't think he'd be a good fit for what we're trying to do. But then my own kind of issues around kind of. I saw him wave his arms up in the air when who were they getting absolutely trounced by last year? I can't remember.
Last year. I thought you meant last weekend.
No, last season, and this kind of like body language, and I just maybe it's just kind of like tainted my view of him. Really, don't get me wrong, absolute quality finisher, isn't he? My days.
There's no debate for me. If there's one guy you're picking, I spend whatever you can on him, get him in. Even though, honestly, I would get him. And I think there's only one scenario where it could happen, but then we need an absolute masterclass from Michael Edwards. He would have to pretty much have to recoup the whole 85 million fee for Nunez, and then whatever remains of that, because then technically you could almost see it as a break-even point of getting one player in and then adding about £50 million onto getting the striker in there, which would more or less fit in the bracket. That would maybe be the only scenario where maybe at £130 million we can get. It's not happening. I know I'm not. I'm joking, but for me right now, there is no better striker out there in the world than Isak. And to be honest, from the back end of the last season, I was already thinking it there, where I was like, if you give me a choice of taking Haaland and Isak, I would take Isak, because I think Isak is like, I've seen some people say that he's almost very like, I'm not going to name names, but in the group sometimes I've seen it where they go, oh well, his link up play and the play with his feet is almost a bit similar to Haaland. It's nowhere near similar to Haaland. He has way better ball control and way better passing and insight as well of how to create a chance himself than I would say right now any centre forward has. I think a lot of the other centre forwards are a bit like, so I watch Jimenez quite a bit because part of my family being Dutch, they all are Feyenoord fans, so I watch Feyenoord quite regularly. I was watching them yesterday actually as well with the game, and I think Jimenez in the Prem, for example, would be a fantastic signing for a club that is between 4th and 6th, kind of just not at the title challenger level yet, but just a bit underneath there. I think that would be a perfect suit for him. I would personally, from watching him a lot, I would say my question marks whether he can reach the absolute top, which we have to consider ourselves in.
He's got good touch, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's a good finisher, but he also he lacks a bit of decision making sometimes in the pitch. He is someone who often does, and actually yesterday he did a lot better than that with what he could do than he normally does in the game. He is often someone as well who you have to create more for than necessarily someone who will create himself. Now, yesterday, actually, I thought he was doing quite well and actually linking up with his wingers and sending them away at the right time. But again, that's one game, so I can't really go off of one game. But yeah, no, and there are other names out there. You can look at a Gyökeres, you can look at a Duran, but they all lack the link up part of the game as well. For me.
Isn't it?
Yeah, because if you're going to get a Gyökeres or you're going to get maybe even a John Duran or something, I think they are better finishers than Nunez, but I think they're also in the play very similar to Nunez, where you have to create for them rather than them getting it. Sorry, Stu, I'll let you go.
Sorry. No, just I'm data comparing again as we go. Sticking all the striker names in as possible. Sesko, or Sechko, however you pronounce his name, is another one who's probably on the same level data-wise as Isak, near enough.
Yeah, he's only 21 as well, isn't he? He's only young.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think Yeah, Isak is definitely like that sort of style of player, and Sechko is probably a close one by the looks of it.
He feels more of a fit, doesn't he? Really, for what we're trying to do. Again, he's heavily linked to Arsenal, isn't he? It's like they've stole Edwards' laptop, I think, recently by how their scouting's going. Reece, any player in world football at your fingertips that you could bring in as our new number 9?
There's two that come to mind. Obviously, the obvious one's Isak. I know we're not going to go for him because the amount when us FSG just
and his work ethic, but go on.
Huh?
And his work ethic. But anyway, that's my own issues.
I
or
think
lack of it, but go on. Yeah, so Isak's one.
Certain players, there's some players you don't always need that. I know we like guys to work hard. You don't always need that. Some players. For me, if you just watch him, he's just a natural goal scorer. He knows how to score. Especially if you look at a lot of the goals he scored this season, he doesn't always have to be involved. And someone who's a talented player,
he's so cool as well, isn't he? It's just like at the end of the game, he looks like he could just go and play another game of 5. He could go and play a game of 5-a-side straight after.
Yeah, he's very calculated, cool, calm, collective. Whereas if you look at Nunez, it's panic. Whereas when you're a striker, it shouldn't really be that. It should be you're cold. It should be like this is normal to you. This is not. Oh, this is difficult. So, and then there's times, like I said, he's not always involved in the game, but then when he does pop up, he gets a goal, and that's what a striker's meant to be known for me. So that, and the reason I would pick him is because he's Premier League proven as well. So you don't have to worry about someone who's going to need a bit of time to adapt. And then the other guy for me would be Joe Pedro from Brighton. Yeah. I like him. I think he's a very good player. He can link up the play. I think he can. I'm not saying exactly the same as Bobby, but I think he could do the false 9. I think
closest thing to him.
Yeah, I think so. His touch as well is ridiculous, isn't it?
I think he'll get goals, but I think he's an underrated player. So
having a 9 that you can ping it to, and he just keeps hold of it, would be massive for us, because then obviously the transition of moving up the pitch would be a lot easier. Which is why Nunez is really struggling, and he kind of like finds his feet, doesn't he? When it is the last 10 minutes of games, when it's just all a little bit more chaotic, and he's more in his comfort zone. I know that sounds stupid that he's chaotically in his comfort zone, but probably again he's just
he looks like he works hard. He knows how to protect the ball well. Yeah. I remember watching him when he came on against Arsenal, and Arsenal winning that game, but then Brighton ended up drawing. He kind of changed that game. When he came on, all of a sudden, all the momentum kind of went to Brian. I think he kind of fits the script in terms of the type of guy we would go for. Because I don't think, like I said, you'll have to pay crazy money for him, maybe 50 or 60 maybe, because that just seems like the going rate now. But I think Slot as well, he likes players that are clever. So you say him, he might not necessarily score 30 goals, maybe 10 or 15, but he will bring others into play. How he's creative and stuff, he'll make up for that in other ways.
Absolutely. Mine's probably, the one I pick's probably a little bit closer to him. I agree with Jay. I'd go with, I know there's a bit of tongue-in-cheek, but I'd go Jayden Dance.
I rate Dance. I just don't think...
I love him. I think he's so Fowler-like in terms of his finishing. It's the eyes. Every finish he does, the keeper goes the wrong. I love seeing that on the highlight reel.
I just think we're going to take our time with him. I don't think we want to rush him.
Don't want to hurt him, do we? So, thank you. Got nearly 6,000 people watching as well. So, again, 6,000 people really basking in the knowledge of Stu, Willem, and Reece. Make sure that you kind of like, subscribe, join us on all our socials.
Craig, sorry. Can we just give a little round of applause for Craig on his debut for hosting tonight as well? Thank you very much.
Indeed. Well done.
As a finish, it could go dramatically downhill in this last 60 seconds, which what we're going to do is, hopefully not, but what we're going to do is Harvey Elliott is massively kind of like, well, not massively, no one kind of reputable, I suppose, is kind of like linking him in great detail in terms of a move away. However, he is linked with Brighton and Dortmund and Brighton with their unbelievable scouting department. It's probably a bit of a longer conversation, but I suppose in a quick kind of, would you sell, would you keep, and why, Stu?
Keep.
Just keep. Why?
He's too talented to let go. He's got so much untapped natural talent, an absolute wonderful left foot. He deserves more game time. Keep him. Do not sell.
100% agree. Willem, what do you do?
Keep at all costs. He's desperate to stay at the club as well. That's enough for me. The way he talks about wanting to stay at Liverpool and the way that this is a club, all good, mate. I want you here. I don't care. I'm good. I'd like to say he's got so much natural talent. I just don't see why. Keep him.
Did you see the interview he gave after the Lille game?
Mm.
And he was basically saying, like, there's no way you're getting me out of this club. I'm staying. And that's what you want to hear from some of the others. But absolutely agree. Reece, what do you do with him? Do you keep him? Do you get rid?
For me, I 100% keep him. I'm a big fan of Elliott. I think he's just been unfortunate because of injuries, and people forget. I think it might have been even a season or 2 seasons ago when he first got that ankle injury, I think, against Leeds.
Yeah,
how well he was playing, and he was kind of becoming a regular in the team at that time. And it's weird. I've said this on other streams on here, but he started the season for slot in pre-season, and we were cooking in pre-season. I know that's a long way back, so it's weird that obviously I know he got an injury that he hasn't really kind of given him a look in. So for me, I would keep him. I think he's better than Jones in the 10, and I know Szoboszlai's there, and he started to perform a lot better. And then physically, obviously, we know what he offers. But I think if you watch Elliott when he comes on, he just looks like a natural in terms of creative, especially when that game against Brentford.
Yeah.
It was him, Chiesa that really changed that game. You could see their decision making. You know, you can't teach certain things. It's like some players don't know what to do. When they came on, they just knew what to do with the passes, and we scored straight away. So yeah, for me, definitely keep him.
Absolutely agree. That game against Lille, when he was kind of like running away from the ball, and as it's kind of like bouncing, the technique he hits it with, I know it took a decent deflection or whatever, but the technique he caught the ball with, and he said himself, didn't he? Said a while back, I would have took a touch and looked up and the movement would have gone. But the technique was nice as well, wasn't it? It's a lovely strike. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend the evening with you all. To the 6,000 people that have been watching, I'll keep sounding like a broken record, but feel free to subscribe, like all our chats, like our brilliant hosts, comments throughout the day. Thank you so much for your time. For everyone else, I'm going to say goodbye alongside the brilliant Stu, Willem and Reece. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to hosting for you again soon. Bye-bye.